make y'all comfortable. For the record, you ain't tryna grow, then it's done for you. For the record, lab on me going all the way. For the record, ain't tryna link, no time to waste. For the record, for the record, for the record, for the record.
Absolutely, man. Don't forget to stream us right after this. You can continue to stream us just in case you didn't get a chance to catch up with the show tonight. We are available on Spotify, YouTube, and of course, Facebook by simply searching, of course, the Homeland Daily. We're also broadcasting live on Logic TV, so make sure you catch us there also. I totally forgot that channel. April, please don't kill me, but I totally forgot the channel for Logic TV. But we'll go ahead and put it up very soon. So just a reminder, we are on all major platforms. Okay, welcome to the Homeland Daily, episode 66. My name is Dane. It's a pleasure to introduce the rest of the panel of the show. We'll start with ladies first, of course. Definitely a K-Man beauty, filmmaker, entrepreneur, but located right now in the heart of New York City. Give it up for Liz Charles. What up, Liz?
Stuck in New York City. Hey, y'all. How you doing? I am. I did I tell you guys last week about my fracture?
No. Whoa. What the hell happened? Please hold that for a second. We need to talk about that. So this happened last weekend.
Okay, so technically it happened before that, but then I finally went to the doctor, and
here we go.
So Dane recently.
Yeah, like a couple of months ago.
He was rough with his finger, and then I don't know if we playing a game. It's like fingers, toes. Rico, watch out! Be careful. You next.
Don't do that to me.
But
and it still looks weird. It does, doesn't it? It does look weird compared to this one. It's still broken, by the way, folks. But I've been going through, like, my pinky finger has been going through therapy. Like a lot of it.
Somebody asked me that. They're like, are you going to do PT on your toe afterwards? I was like, how am I supposed to do PT on my toe? Like, what do you do? Just bend it? Anyway.
I'm doing it. My doctor's a little bit too excited about working out my pinky finger. I've never seen a doctor that excited to do stuff like that. Yeah, every time I go there, he's like, hey, we keep doing that over and over. I'm like, doctor, this is kind of weird.
Weird. Okay.
So I've got the whole boot thing going. I would show you guys, but I don't want to.
So how did it happen though? How did that whole fiasco happen?
So Rico, listen, there comes a time in life when you reach a certain age, and then things just start happening to your body that you can't really explain. Like, I was walking and I turned. That's it. That's how I got it. That's the end of the story. I was in my living room and I turned.
I got them stories for days. I got, like, literally, I was excited when I was building my house because I always wanted an upstairs house. Now, the age I am, like, I want to take that away so fast. I can't go up the stairs. It's like a challenge for me. Like, sometimes I just sleep downstairs. So I don't know. You just
be like, I don't know. Things just start happening. So just enjoy your body right now. Savor it.
Right? Why are you laughing? Why are you? Hey, let's give it up for Rico Rolando, singer-songwriter, producer, and entrepreneur. Why are you laughing at us old people, man?
I mean, there comes a time, I guess, what Liz just says, when you just get old and things start happening. Thank God I have not reached the age of, I think it's like, what are you guys going on, 51, 52, something?
Oh, that's good. That's really good. That's actually your first joke, right? That's on Homeland Daily. Really good. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I'll remember that. Continue.
It's okay to say it to me. I know women take that real personal, so you probably going to have to talk to
Liz.
I know she is, man. Listen, guys, we have a great show packed for you guys. Jam-packed show tonight, but it's a great show, I promise you. And don't forget, if you want to comment, it's available. Just keep it safe, all right? Keep it PG. Don't forget, kids might be listening, and we don't want to upset any parents. And most of all, we just don't want to upset anyone that might take it personal. So make sure you come with the facts and just keep it positive. This is a very positive show. That's the purpose of the Homeland Daily. It's always pushing the culture forward. And we always want to continue to keep doing that. Now, we know some people might be upset in their tones and the way they speak. Just make sure when you're doing it, you're speaking with facts, and it's the truth, right? We're going to proofread it at all times. So just remember that. All right, we're going to jump into the entertainment report. And boy, do I have some spiciness for y'all.
It's now time for your entertainment report.
So
amazing that this is my life.
Exclusively on the Homeland Daily.
I don't know what to start off with. I think, if you watch a horror movie, and you have nightmares, it's always good to wake up and put on a cartoon. So I'm gonna start with something that's pretty scary first. Let's give it up for Tamara Braxton. Just recently, I don't know if you guys heard the rumors, if you read it, but her husband recently filed for a restraining order, indicating that Tamara Braxton has been, get this, folks, beating the hell out of him. So
Wait,
I'm just
what?
Yeah, he's just been beaten like crazy from Tamara. Now, it's not funny. I'm gonna be very honest with you. I'm laughing just to kick away the nervousness, but it's not funny at all, because there is a lot of men that I know that go through this, and they never talk about it because, you know what, it's something that's pretty much embarrassing to talk about. But men actually do go through this, man. So women, don't get it twisted. Men, don't get it twisted. This is something that's very much common. You just don't know about it. I'm talking about like physical, like really beat Mike Tyson, I might bite your ears off type beat down. So I don't know what you guys think about this. He did not really give an indication to the court on why he was filing the restraining order. He did say she is abusive, and she has placed her hands on him, but he did not indicate why he needed a restraining order that bad. So it has to be serious if it went that far, right? Yeah. So we don't know exactly what happened.
Rico, what do you think?
I mean, personally, Tamar Braxton, didn't she she got cut off from The View, or not The View,
The Real.
The Real. She was on The Real, and then she got cut. And then obviously she had her own show going on, but couple months back, if we remember, she actually was on Suicide Watch.
Yes, that's right.
Previously, and then he was saying something to do with the show. It was the show that was making her feel this way, and now he's coming out with claims that she's being abusive, and now he wants to file a restraining order and all that stuff. I don't know. I think it all comes down to what's really going on in the world right now, and a lot of people are just on edge with everything that's happening. So I think we just have to really take a closer look and to see what's really happening. But again, if this is your own husband that's coming up with these claims, it's got to be something going on that's drastic for sure. But Liz, what do you think?
I didn't know she was married. I didn't know she got remarried. So
she's not married. It's the boyfriend. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's the boyfriend. Okay, all right. So yeah, Tamar always has some kind of drama around her, and But
it's her family, right? She grew up in a very dramatic family. They're all
yeah.
reality show together. So I mean,
and she feels like the most dramatic one out of the entire family. To be entirely, it feels like Toni Braxton is the most chill, but that might just be because she has the biggest outlet. You know,
debatable. That's very debatable. I've heard Toni Braxton songs, and I'm just going to debate that.
You can't alleged.
What are you talking about? You were a singer-songwriter. Half of the songs you have written is about someone, right?
I agree.
Okay, and you're quite emotional too, sir, with some of the songs that you be.
So what are you trying to say? That's what I'm getting at.
But maybe that's what it is. She gets her drama out in her music, so then her life can be a little bit calmer. Tamar's done less music, and so she's just used to being
she's used
dramatic.
To the reality TV.
Rico, that's for you. You're welcome.
By the way, Rico doesn't put out any dramatic song teasing him. This is how I get back at Rico for the 51-year-old joke. But he doesn't put out any dramatic songs at all. You can listen to it for yourself on Spotify and iTunes. Heck, be my guest. All right. Also, moving on, guys, this is not too much of a breaking news or entertainment report, but just something I really wanted to discuss, because quite recently we've been seeing a very high fall in job losses here. There's a lot of people losing their jobs. The job that's really been impacted is the tourism industry. And I'm actually asking our listeners, our viewers, for opinions. What needs to happen? How can we help this industry? What needs to take place? What do you guys think? If we had to take an outlook of what's going to happen in the next 3 months, do you think this is an industry that's going to be revived in the next 3 months? Because I'm pretty scared for this industry right now. You walk into the hotels, there's absolutely no one there, especially with the business back in full effect. The island's pretty much open up besides traveling. And of course, kids are back in school. You're not finding a lot of people doing staycations anymore. And I'm just very concerned about this area because I read in the Compass a story about this young lady that actually quit before COVID her banking job that she's been working for 30 years and decided to serve in hospitality. But she earned her associate degree only to find out that the pandemic hit and there was just no job openings in this area. She couldn't find a job in the restaurant. She couldn't find a job in the hotel, doing anything at all. Now, I know she was lucky enough to recently receive something at the Marriott along with 4 other women. But it's an industry that I'm scared for because this is literally, guys, how we survive here on this island. And I'm just trying to figure out, hey, what's going to happen? What do you guys think is going to take place in the year 2021 for the tourism industry?
This is what I think is really challenging. And a friend and I, we were talking about this yesterday, literally, kind of contemplating when the borders are going to reopen. And the issue being that the only way to sustain the tourism industry is to reopen the borders because government, won't be able to sustain for much longer the amount of people on the payroll and the unemployment and all of that that's going on. And so it comes down to this really, it's a rock and a hard place, right? Yeah. Because on the one hand, you're saying, okay, open up the borders, risk, COVID, risk get the community getting infected. But then also, even if you do open the borders and risk the community getting infected, tourism over the entire world, people aren't necessarily itching to travel like that. Yeah. So even if we do open, it doesn't mean that it's going to go back and bounce back immediately. So it's really, truly a rock and a hard place. And I think this is one of those moments where, like 2007, 2008, people are going to end up pivoting. People are going to end up saying, okay, well, what are my other skills? We'll find other ways to invest in ourselves. But it's also a time that's just going to be hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is. I don't know. Rico, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I would have to agree with Liz for sure. It definitely for the next 6 to 9 months, it's going to be very unexpected with whatever we're doing in terms of job placements and stuff like that in the tourism sector. But it's really gonna depend on us, trying to push into something else, into something different that we've never really wanted to focus on before, and getting in that uncomfortable spot to really, just make your boundaries like worthwhile. So I think it's, again, like what Liz said, it's gonna be very tough, but it's all gonna be, it's the whole world is happening. Like we can't expect this from anywhere else but what's happening here. So
yeah, most definitely. And I agree with you too, Rico. This is happening all over the world. I just know for us, it's really our survival key. This is how we survive here. So this is something that is just been a real concern for me, especially hearing people in the tourism industry state, hey, we may not be okay in April. We may not be okay in May. Like this may not happen until next year's summer, or perhaps not. It's the first time event planners cannot plan an event. Hotels cannot plan an event. Like you don't know what to do because you're basically working off of, like, you're in the dark and you don't know if you plan this, what's going to happen in the next 2 months, right? And it's just a scary thing. But I guess the best thing to do is just we're going to pray and hope for the best.
Yeah, and I think this might be like a really oversimplified thing, but maybe it'll help someone. And that is, at times like this, when you start thinking, for me personally, I start thinking, okay, well, how can I buy local, right? Like, how can we invest? People who are in the community, you want to keep the money in the community, right? So that kind of opens up new avenues for people who may have wanted to do things before, but felt like they couldn't because they couldn't compete with US prices for this type of grocery or, or plant sale or whatever it was that before things that are being imported, they're like, oh, I can't compete. Well, now maybe, as people buy local and invest back into the economy, you can invest in that project that you maybe wanted to do, that thing that you maybe loved, whether it's farming, whether it's, doing some kind of handcrafted something, whatever.
Yep. Yeah. But and also tourism industry, people that work in the hotel industry, wherever you are, please do not abuse this now when the market fully opens back up, because I do believe that we will see a light at the end of the tunnel very soon. But don't abuse it next time this happens. Like, realize where the heartbeat of the country is, and that's, of course, here, local, here in Cayman. We supported you. We'll always support you. We just always want you to keep that in your heart, because I feel like sometimes that can be easily forgotten, and we just don't want that to happen. All right. So just remember that. But did you feel that is our next topic? Of course, there was apparently an earthquake here this morning here on the island. Wasn't anything to be worried about, folks. Matter of fact, I'll read the details out for you guys. There was a pair of earthquakes that struck the Cayman Islands around Tuesday morning. Of course, it was notified on the Earthquake Plus app. I don't know if you guys had that, and also it was confirmed in the United States. Also, the magnitude of 4.9, about 64 miles southeast of Eastern Grand Cayman. That quake hit around 8 a.m. At a depth of 6.2 miles, according to the USCGS. All right, there wasn't a lot of people that actually felt this earthquake in the Eastern District, but I will tell you this. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know which one I'm more afraid of: an earthquake hitting again, or my wife reacting to it. I'm just trying to figure out which one scares me the worst, because her reaction is terrifying, folks. Like, it scares me and the kids all the time. I just gotta let them know mommy has some times that she really just needs to take some space, and that's her just releasing everything that goes on in the world, because they don't even feel the earthquake. When she screams and she reacts, they don't feel an earthquake, they feel her, and that's it. So I don't know who else felt it in the Eastern District, but yes, indeed, folks, we did have an earthquake this morning. And I will end our entertainment report on this news. Of course, you guys heard recently on the new domestic bill, apparently that was recently passed, which has created a big
I love that you're ending with this. You that's real wise, Jay.
I got to, man. And you know what? It was a very hard statement that was made by the opposition leader. Apparently, he attacked the Governor Martin Roper in words, not physically, just about the new bill that was passed, and basically making statements saying that he has his own agenda, and this is why this was done. And he actually wrote that.
He's like a conspiracy theorist, actually.
Yeah, man.
I suppose you know. you sense it.
I'm gonna ask you guys first, because I have my opinion on this, and I'm gonna ask you guys first how you feel about this new bill that was passed. Same-sex marriage, folks. It's pretty much legal here on this island now. So how do you guys feel about that?
I will give my opinion last.
Okay.
For me personally, I feel it's like Cayman needs to grow up. Everywhere around the world has the same type of people, whether you're gay, straight, bisexual, all that different stuff. There is gay, there is bisexual, there is straight in Cayman. But again, it's just like, why are we gonna discriminate against one type of person? For me personally, yes, you can be Christian, but again, Christians are what? They're supposed to be very helpful people. They're supposed to be people of, the community that is able to talk to many different cultures. So again, we need to get out of that really mindset of the gutter and just focus on the positive things.
Yeah, man. I think my only thing is, before we jump into our next interview, we have a very special guest waiting in the background. So I just kind of want to give this very quickly and just jump right into that interview. I'm not going to stay long on it. I am a Christian, and I've been a Christ follower for 7 years. People will expect a different answer from me, but I'll tell you this. I think a lot of Christian people would like to believe that Jesus spoke to them and told them to go and hold protests and stand in front of the LA building and to give negative comments. But I'm just going to be honest with you. Jesus didn't speak to you at all. And if he did speak to you, he'd be talking to you about the stuff that you have in your very own closet that you need to clean up, because at the end of the day, if you're a Christian, all sins are on even play field, boo-boo. All right? Doesn't mean when you go to heaven, Jesus is going to be like, all right, all gay people line up there. All people that your wife line up there. All people that lie. No, he's going to judge you on the same standards. So at the end of the day, watch your own sin. All right? Yep. Be concerned about your sin. And that's it. We need to move on. We got bigger problems. I want to know why the pastors are not by the LA building when these kids get molested. That's what I'm trying to find out. Why are you guys not marching with picket signs when kids are being touched? Like, that really concerns me. I think we really need to figure out where our agenda is here, folks. So that's going to be it for me before I get some calls tonight.
Yeah. all of my old family is going to be giving me a call tonight.
Yep. And I think I'll just end by saying at the end of the day, the politicians can say whatever they'd like, really because they know that they have the protection of the fact that the governor is going to do this. And so they can kind of hide behind that by pandering to people. And I think at the end of the day, people need to consider that there are UN like human rights laws, and we have to abide by that, like as a nation. You have to follow the rules. And if the human rights laws say this, then the UK has to enforce that for its overseas territory. If you don't like it, don't be an overseas territory. But we have advocated to keep our place as an overseas territory. So, the end.
Hey, man.
Congratulations. That's all I'll say.
That was so good. That was so nothing more. Hey, don't try to be independent in 2020. That's all I'm saying. Don't try to be independent. All right, it's now time to bring in our special guest. No stranger to viewers, no stranger to TV personally, radio too, media queen, beautiful as you guys can tell, and now a married woman because this whole time I'm calling you MUTTO, and like your gut is. Let me ask you this, Janelle. The first question I want to ask you is: your dad upset that you did not hyphenate?
You know what? It was a really long process of deciding. I've only really just started going by Janelle Milburn because I was debating even within myself, like, what do I do? Do I hyphenate? And it turns out that to hyphenate your name, you actually have to renounce, like fully renounce your previous name. Like I actually have to fill out paperwork that says, I no longer, hold any claim to the name MUTTO, and it was almost more emotional for me. So I was like, well, instead of hyphenating, I'm just going to go by Milburn. And people don't seem to be that confused. My dad is fine. My mom is MUTTO. She was king before, and now she's MUTTO. So my mom did it. I did it. I think he's okay. It's all 3 girls though, so he doesn't have any.
Amazing. As long as daddy's okay, man, because your mom is wonderful. I love her to death, but your dad scares me. He's a very creative genius, by the way. But he just scares me, man. I don't want to have the conversation that your husband have. Hey, I'm going to marry your daughter. I don't know how that went, but congratulations to him.
It went well, I'm guessing.
It went well, right?
Yeah. No, he's been really, well received in the family. So we have a 1-year-old now, 13 months, and
congratulations.
A little bag under my eye. I'm trying to get some concealer.
We don't see it. You're fine. We don't see it. Welcome to the show, Janelle. Thank you so much for giving us your time. We really appreciate you, and it's an honor to have you on the Homeland Daily.
Janelle, thank you for coming. You are no stranger to the island. And as someone who's been a host of a show, one of the things that I found very impressive lately. So I'm going to ask you to give everyone a quick rundown of your background in case they haven't watched TV in a couple of years and that kind of thing. Or they haven't listened to your mother on the radio, or they don't know who your dad is because they don't know Culture Foundation. Anyway, but just in case, for new people, give us a rundown on your background. And then one of the things that I found so kind of enthralling and why I thought it was important to invite you onto this platform is that you have been so vocal. As someone who has had a platform in the past, you have still been very vocal about these issues, and why you thought it was important for you to use the influence that you've kind of gained over the years to speak about the things that you're speaking about.
Sure. So to start off with my background, my parents were both traditional West Indian parents who raised us to be high achievers and wanted us to be people. And my dad's from Guyana, my mom's from Jamaica, from Barbados, from the US. So we have quite a diverse background just within our own family unit. But when I was about 14 years old, I grew up in Cayman. I was born in the US, but lived here probably about a year old. And then about 14, when I went to school in Canada, I was there for 7 years. I went to college in 2010. I've been living here since. So Cayman definitely was home for me. But I suppose in terms of speaking about issues, particularly regarding
you had some technical difficulties there with I think we're still having some audio interference. I don't know what it is, but we're
Huh.
having some audio interference. It sounds good now. If you speak now, I think
Janelle, I can hear you. Keep going. Keep talking. I can hear you. Go ahead.
okay, perfect.
That's probably why. Sorry about that, guys. So yeah, basically, when I think about my own identity, like how I identify, I've always identified as a Black person. And when I went to school in Canada, people started to kind of question that because they said to me, well, but you're not really Black, are you? Like you're not fully Black.
Mm.
And then I had to reckon with that and say, well, wait a minute. I guess only my mom is Black. My dad is kind of mixed. So he has one Indian parent or, traditionally Indian parent from India. And then one parent who is sort of, her background is sort of Portuguese, Guyanese. So I really am only half Black if you're talking about my racial makeup. But in terms of how I identify, I've always identified as being Black. So any issues that had to do with race, particularly being abroad, always kind of held my ear because I did, while I was abroad, but also even in Cayman, come to perceive differences in how people were treated based on their race. And we all know that that's reality, right?
Mhm.
I think some people try to deny that that's something that really exists, but I don't know. I don't think that's reality.
Yeah.
So particularly when, we saw George Floyd murdered recently in May, that hit home because what I think started to happen, which is why there's been a true shift now in social justice dialogue, both in the United States, but also everywhere in the world. Like people are taking the movement internationally, is because there was actually a response from people who weren't suffering the crimes.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So, George Floyd was particularly shocking. Obviously, we've seen video evidence of Black people in America being killed by cops. That's not the first time that that's happened. But I don't know about you guys, I couldn't even watch the video properly.
Mhm.
Like, there's no part of me that can, view that kind of thing and then just go back to my normal day. It's highly emotional for me, but probably not because I identify as Black, but just because it's a human being. And
Mhm.
that's why, for me, it was really shocking when fewer people than I expected actually had any response. And so when you talk about being vocal, for me, it was like, well, how can I not say anything? Especially if even one person is listening.
Yeah.
So that was just, my impetus because if you look at my Instagram, I think I don't have a whole lot of followers and a lot of like quote unquote social media influence. And it's probably because I like to talk about this stuff. Like I do enjoy talking about social justice issues. And I think probably from 2016 is when I really started to engage and try to educate myself. And that was around the time that Colin Kaepernick started to do his protesting and kneeling on the field and all of that. And you see the response to those types of movements and the anger that it, brings up in people. And to me, that's a trigger to say, we need to continue to have the conversation. If that's how mad you are about it, something is wrong. And so we should talk about this.
Yeah.
And that's why, I felt driven to, sort of speak out and try to educate people who are around me and do what I can because I'm also learning.
Yeah, most definitely. And sometimes in Cayman, it's always a confusion of: are we facing more racism? Are we facing more prejudice? Like what's really happening in Cayman? So what are your thoughts on it? What do you feel like is being mostly in inferior in Cayman?
Well, in regards to racism, so the difficulty with what's happening in the United States is that it is really a fabric of the country. The slavery history of the country means that from the time the United States was founded, um, racism was kind of built into the fabric of who the nation was. And so there's quite a different history there than there is in the Cayman Islands. And so, I've heard people respond to people here who are trying to bring up some of these issues, say, well, you're just cheapening the Black Lives Matter movement. You're hopping on the bandwagon. This isn't about you. It's about African Americans. This is not something to be hijacked. You're not experiencing the same injustices. And I think there's validity to that. But at the same time, certainly Cayman does have slavery as part of its history. As you guys had Mr. Christopher Williams and Dr. Roy Bodden on the show, and so you guys have talked about that already at length. But I think current day, perhaps, we're not obviously seeing the police brutality aspect and racism. A lot of the organizers, if you follow them in terms of the United States movements, racism is institutionalized. So it's built into the school system, the justice system, the housing system, things like voter suppression, so it feels to African Americans, and it is the reality if you look at the actual statistics, that there are forces working against us in terms of the actual systems that we have to live in and exist in. But we don't really have that so much in Cayman, at least in my opinion. We do certainly have a whole lot of prejudice where people are, basing their judgments of people on stereotypes that are highly inappropriate or outdated and those sorts of things. There's a lot of colorism in Cayman. We all know that. When I was in junior high, I remember people, having a best friend who was dark skinned and people saying to us, well, you're the pretty one because my skin was fairer than hers, or lighter. Fairer is probably not the politically correct word to use. And that was horrifying to me at the time. So I was just confused. I never grew up feeling that way. But it clearly was a part of the social construct of Cayman. So I don't quite know that I don't think that the racism exists in Cayman in the same institutionalized systemic way. But certainly there are lots of aspects of prejudice that sort of almost intersect sometimes with being Caymanian as well.
Yeah.
So it's a unique problem. But I think it is really exciting that people want to have that conversation, because there's a difference between hijacking a movement and empathizing with a situation that's happening abroad and realizing, well, there are issues right here, in my own home that I want to try and address.
Yeah. Man, I think just quite recently, Janelle, thank you so much for sharing that with us. But I think quite recently, I had a very uncomfortable conversation with one of my white friends. And I'm just going to say it that way because that's just the reality. But we were talking about the situation that took place and everything that has happened. And he was like one of the individuals to call me up because I had many calls, and it was just like, hey, I don't understand this. Can you explain? Or there was even one individual who said, I just want to let you know that you are loved. I think they were just really honestly just trying to show their support and show that they cared, or trying to understand and try to basically just have empathy in the whole situation, right? But I just remember one of my friends, I always wanted to have this conversation with him. I wanted to say, hey, how come every time you go out, you separate yourself, you have dinner with Caymanian folks and people of color, but then when you want to hang out with your white friends, I've noticed that. I don't think I'm overthinking that. You separate that. That's separated. What's going on there? And he got offended. But I'm like, hey, I can show you. Listen. I'm not overthinking this. This is real. I've seen you. Why are you getting offended? This is us educating ourselves. Have you noticed this? And he said he had to call me back a week later, still upset, still not talking to me. But he was like, yeah, those folks don't understand. They make a mockery of the whole Black Lives Matter movement. So I'm like, okay, so I was right. It's uncomfortable to have me there. So I guess my question is, Janelle, have you dealt with uncomfortable conversations throughout this whole period?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, it's really brave of you to have that conversation with your family, because a lot of times, people feel like I don't want to lose face by having this uncomfortable conversation. But who really stands to lose if we continue to uphold the status quo? Well, probably not the people that are getting angry at you. Definitely, racism is about a power dynamic, and so is prejudice to an extent. Who stands to gain from us actually having this conversation? Well, actually everybody. But if you don't feel that way, then it's probably because you are perceiving that there's a difference between yourself and somebody else. and you don't want to become like that person in terms of all the disadvantages that they face because of the color of their skin or whatever else the case may be.
Yep.
So certainly, I've had uncomfortable conversations with people, and that's kind of like, I kind of like to do that because I think that's the only way we're going to grow and evolve as both as people individually, but as a community. But certainly, it's no secret. You look at advertisements for the tourism industry or, any other industry in Cayman that are advertising for people to buy their products or take on their services. And there's no Black people in the ad.
That's
And I
true.
was, where does this, resort or restaurant, where do they exist? They exist on an island where 50% of I'm assuming, I don't really know the exact numbers, but it has to be at least 50% of the generationally Caymanian population, or perhaps those have now become status holders, are people of color. And there's no people of color in the advertisements because it's almost like we've got to hide that away. Like we don't, those are not the people that we're advertising to. We don't want those people's business. And it's because we acknowledge that those people have less money, they have less influence, they're less likely to want to socialize in our sphere because there aren't other people that look like them. And that's a huge part of it. Why would you want to engage in a social activity where the people around you don't appreciate your struggle? Like that's a very difficult thing for you to just kind of dampen down those feelings because they're legitimate.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Like, people of color who are experiencing anger or hurt or discomfort because of the dialogue that's come up and how true it rings for them around the injustices that they face, that anger is valid. People love to bring up the protests in the US and say, oh, those people are just being so destructive and they're not helping. Don't know how you can't empathize with the deep, overwhelming sense of anger at the fact that your life is not valuable to certain people.
Chanel, one of the things that I want to key in on with you really quickly is the fact that you said, when you went away, did you identify as Black before you went away, or did that happen after you went away? And how did being away kind of, and that response of like, well, you can't be Black, like, affect you? And do you think it's like, yeah. Is that when you were like, oh no, I'm gonna keep my card? At what point? And the reason I ask this is because we've had, conversations on this show about whether or not Caymanians, identify as Black and how touchy that subject is. So I'm curious for you, when that moment was, and because a lot of Caymanians do experience culture shock when they go to university or they go away and are told that they are Black for the first time.
It's a really good question. I don't actually know exactly when it happened, but I would think that it probably became more solidified once I went abroad. But it was at such a young age, that I don't know if it was conscious, but certainly I felt almost like a need to rebel and to if you're going to assume that I'm less smart because I'm coming from the Caribbean and that we don't have electricity and all these other things, almost like it kind of melded together with, the Caribbean side of me, but also a racial component to that, because there were a ton of Caribbean girls at my school. It was all girls high school, whole other thing. There were a ton of them from Barbados, Jamaica, Bahamas, who were, appeared to be white. And those girls didn't experience the same things that I experienced in terms of a reaction from, some of the students that weren't accustomed to dealing with people from Caribbean cultures. So I think that's what kind of, made me feel like, well, there's a difference. But then when I went to college, there was a Black students organization, and there was a separate Caribbean students organization. And a lot of the Caribbean students, there was a conversation at one point about whether or not those two groups should merge. And a lot of the Caribbean students were appalled at the idea that they would become the same as a Black students organization because they didn't identify that way. So I think that certainly, what you're saying is certainly true, that a lot of people perhaps don't identify that way, even if the color of their skin is brown or black or whatever, but to me, I think that's also meaningful. Well, why don't you acknowledge that even though your skin is a certain color, that might be a part of your racial background? And I think because people know that once you accept that you're Black, you have to face this cognitive dissonance where you have to admit to yourself, you know what I mean? Like, there are things wrong with the way that people treat me sometimes. And I mean, I've had to listen to people call racial slurs to my friends at, in college, and all of these types of things. Like, the behavior is just really poor, you know?
And,
But
and what was it like for you getting back to Cayman? Because I know I had sort of like the same struggles where when I went to Canada, it was very like much of a culture shock that I was Black, and then all of a sudden when I get back to Cayman, it's like, Rico, why are you acting so white? And then I'm just like, I'm not really acting white. It's just like how I'm just going along with the world. So how was it like for you getting back to Cayman?
Yeah, well, I had a moment too where I think, when iPods were a thing, and a friend of mine who was, had always lived in Cayman, she said, well, why do you only have white people music on your iPod? This is weird. When you're listening to this, Fall Out Boy or whatever was popular in Canada at the time. So, I can, kind of relate to that. But I think for me, I just culturally, like, I just feel like so many elements of Black culture, both in Caribbean culture, but also Black culture from North America, resonates with me.
Yeah.
And I think, culture can be so simple, like simple things, even like humor, where you just can't get the same reaction out of someone or have the same type of conversation with somebody if they don't have that cultural understanding, which is why I think there tends to be segregation in Cayman. Like, you will go to a bar and see no Caymanians there, but there's hundreds of people there. And we know this, like, we know that there are lots of people from other parts of the world. But why is it that there is such a separate? You can move here and never interact with a Caymanian, unless you have to go in a government building, to do whatever, or to immigration or something like that. But you really can exist here without ever having to interact with a Caymanian, to learn about them or to learn about what it means to be living in the Cayman Islands from a Caymanian's perspective. So I think that's all very problematic, and there's a lot of underlying issues there, but people don't speak about it a lot, which I think is not a great idea, because it does tend to become like this. It starts to like, it's kind of like under the rug, and it's like seething under there, and then blow-ups happen, and that's never healthy. So just briefly, going back to a point that Dane said, where people will have this anger in reaction to people who are trying to explain to them the injustices that they've suffered. That's not really fair. It's expected, but you have to be able to be compassionate to a person who is saying something to you about injustices that they face. I mean, how can you not want to take the time to be compassionate towards that person? But at the same time, it's natural to feel like you have to be defensive, because what you're hearing is white people are racist, or white people need to do this, and white people need to do that. And that is popular in the language with the Black Lives Matter movement in particular. But I think what's important for people to take away is that people aren't trying to suggest that white people are bad. They're just trying to point out that you probably, as a white person, experience a different reality than me. And that's not your fault, but you probably have a role to play in changing that. And that's all people are trying to say.
Big role. Chanel, man, I know you dropped a lot of gems tonight, and it was a pleasure having you on. I wish this conversation can last forever, because I think you're talking about things that people actually need to hear. But this is the part of the show where we actually ask for last thoughts. We want to know something that you would like to say to someone that's listening right now, that's of color or not of color, or probably lived a white privileged life their entire life, he or she, and they've probably been in the circumstances like my friend did. They're confused. They're angry at their Black friends now because they don't understand why they're making a big deal about this. Maybe there's some advice that you can give to kind of wrap up the show tonight. And we would love to hear from you now.
Sure. And thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity. I mean, you guys are amazing. I think you're doing such an awesome job of bringing up really important topics of conversation for people at various age groups and, various backgrounds to tune into. So thank you for that. But I think the thing that it's the most important for me in talking to people about issues of race is just to understand that there's no shame in not knowing everything.
Yeah.
Like you're growing, we're all learning, but it is, probably not the right thing to do, at least from my perspective. And from a perspective of someone who believes in universal human rights and us all, trying to be the best versions of ourselves, there's something wrong with, trying to usurp that conversation or make other people suffering about you. So let's try to get away from that, and try to examine ourselves. And self-awareness is kind of like the point of life. If you can't learn something about yourself and figure out how to move through the world in a way that affects people in a positive way, then what's the point, So I think for people who are experiencing a sense of wanting to disengage with the conversation around Black Lives Matter or around social injustice, anywhere in the world or in Cayman, try to examine why that is, and if you do feel like there's something to be said, have that conversation with a person you trust who can help you to, not go into defense mode and get angry and start trying to win an argument instead of being really sensitive to some real delicate issues. And just, try to listen more than you speak if you think you're at that point where you just don't know enough.
Yep.
And then once you listen, it takes years sometimes. It can take a lifetime. But if the effort is there, I think that's the most important thing. Effort and patience. And, if the movement doesn't matter to you, there's nothing anybody can do about that. But if it does, there are places to donate, there are conversations to have, there's lots of work to be done, and it's ongoing. So I think people should just be brave and dive in and try not to have a selfish or kind of self-centered reaction to people when they're trying to open up to you about something that's been really painful.
Yep. Yeah, man. We want to thank you once again, Janelle, for being a part of the show. We hope that we have you on for a part 2 segment because this is really good and this education also. And congratulations on your marriage and your new bundle of joy, man. That's got to be a blessing. It's great to see you as a wife and as a mom to lead the new way for a next beautiful young lady out there. Or it's a boy. I'm sorry, right?
Yeah,
you have a boy, correct?
I always thought
so yes.
It's a boy.
Hey, they say that strong women make men. I'm not saying they don't do that about women, but that's a powerful saying. My grandma used to always tell me that powerful women make men, man. So yeah, there you go. Janelle, thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you guys.
All right, man. We are the Homeland Daily, episode 66. We are a little bit over time, guys, but you know what? It's for your benefit. That was a really good show, really good feedback. And I cannot leave the show without giving our last thoughts, so we'll make it very quick. We'll start with ladies first. Liz, why don't you give us your final thoughts on the show?
You know what? I think I really admire the fact that Janelle has decided to take a stand for something. Like, I really appreciate that. And I do think that others take a stand because you can take a stand for nothing as well. And that in itself means like you're complicit with your silence. And I love that she has chosen to be really intentional and to use her platform and her voice. And I would encourage others to do the same. So take stock of who you are, take stock of what is inside of you, and then speak your truth. Shout out to Tiffany Ebanks for listening as well. Also another lovely woman who
Rico,
takes
what
a
about
stand
you,
as
ma'am?
well.
Most definitely. I would also say like knowledge is power, and make sure that you're not ignorant in any conversations that you're talking with your friends, making sure that you know everything about the story that you're talking about, especially during this time, and especially during 2020. It's all about really being cognizant of everything that you're doing. So major shout out to Janelle. We would love to have her back for sure for part 2. She dropped a lot of bars, and I hopefully she'll be back again very soon.
Yeah, man. Definitely, I love everything you guys said. Just quite recently, I started hanging out with some really incredible people that wanted to sit down and have Friday morning coffee conversations, just about uncomfortable conversations like this. And guess what, guys? They're not black. They're white. And they've had incredible conversations. They want to change the narrative. They want to change things. They want to change how their kids are raised. These are not dads yet, but they're about to be. And they want to make sure their kids understand what's going on in this world right now and how to fix it. And they are a part of it. Now, I've always said this to them. It's not your fault. It is absolutely not your fault, but it is your fight. It's going to be your fight. And we want you to always remember that if you don't see it in your environment, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Like Janelle said, educate yourself. One of the first quote I came upon and I told Liz was when Dr. Martin Luther King said, you know, when you hear a lightning, it's only when it strikes. So it's around you. It just hasn't struck yet. And we just want you to understand that it's there, but it's going to start with us. All right. So just remember that. I love shows like this because I feel like people thought that we just stood there and we watched George and we were like, oh, that looks pretty painful. And we just walked away. But we never walked away. I still know that Breonna Taylor deserves justice. And it hurts me more that it's a female, that her killers have not been brought to justice. That hurts even more. Because it just shows that we have more than just a black issue. We have a equality issue, also a gender issue. And we need to learn how to fix these things in the world. So without saying any more, and hopefully we can continue with topics like this, we'll leave the agenda open for you guys to comment and to talk and to bring up discussions. Because like we said, this show is on recap constantly. So this is not the only day you can comment. You can comment throughout the whole week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks. Just do it. All right. So Homeland Daily, episode 66. We'll see you again next week, Tuesday. Y'all be safe, right? Don't create any drama out there. It's not necessary. We don't want to be talking to you guys on the show, okay? All right. Peace out, guys.
For the record, I'm done trying to make y'all comfortable. For the record, you ain't trying to grow, then it's done for you. For the record,